Welcome to the Middle Ground. I'm your host, Ohio Divided. Here we dive into all things sports. Ohio State, Michigan, the Bengals, the Browns, the Reds, college football, the NFL, college hoops, Major League Baseball. And hey, we might even dip into a little NBA when things get spicy. If it's happening in the sports world, we're talking about it right here on the Middle Ground. Before we get rolling, make sure you please like, subscribe, follow, retweet, do all the things that help this show grow. We appreciate each and every one of you. Now, let's get to the show. Welcome, everybody. Good evening, Norm.
How's it going?
Pretty good. Got a lot of snow again today in the great state of Ohio. From Ohio State beating Michigan and that snow that came on Saturday that I had to shovel feels like forever ago with everything that's going on just within college football and everything. But overnight, it looks like we got about 4 to 5 more inches. So did you get to enjoy yourself shoveling today at all?
I sure did. Did a little last night. Woke up, had to do a little bit more this morning, and wasn't too bad, but I guess that's probably because I did it twice.
Yeah, split it up a little bit. Never fun to do, but something that you got to do. But nonetheless, snow on the ground means football's being played. So Norm, starting off with Penn State, what the fuck's going on there?
Yeah, I think the funny part is like at the time everyone was kind of in agreement of firing James Franklin, just with how everything went down. You lose to UCLA, and then you lose to Northwestern in like devastating fashion. They fire him immediately, and now we're almost 2 months from that, and they're still searching.
And there's like no rumors of anybody coming anytime soon. The BYU coach kind of, I feel like, popped out of nowhere, where I think that he definitely, I think, used Penn State a little bit as a way to get more money out of BYU, because like Penn State obviously offered him something, and BYU at least matched it, if not upped it from what Penn State was offering him. And he's like, nah, I'm good. I'm going to stick right here, BYU, and you guys go on with your shit. I don't know if you saw, they're rated like 135th or 140th in the recruiting rankings right now, and they've got guys leaving left and right, a majority of which are following James Franklin to Virginia Tech. As of right now, they have 4 recruits or 4 commitments from kids right now. Signing day is tomorrow. 3 of those 4 kids are from the state of Pennsylvania, and who knows if they're even going to hold on to them. They're probably still just committed because they've always dreamed of playing football for Penn State. But I would say this is about as the closest thing as you could get from a self-inflicted death penalty.
Yeah, I mean, I have a interesting comparison just as I was like kind of looking into this. And we've talked about how Nebraska has just like fallen off the face of the earth compared to what they used to be and their dominance. Essentially, in 2003, Nebraska fired the successor to Tom Osborne, legendary coach. He was 58-19 in 6 seasons. They went to the national championship 1 year under him. He had a 7-7 season, and then he had a 9-3 season. They fired him after the 9-3 season. After that 9-3 season, they took 40 days to hire a new coach, and they were searching all over the place. A whole bunch of NFL guys rumored, Houston Nutt back in the day. And essentially, they didn't hire a coach until January. They hire Bill Callahan, who obviously we know now is the offensive line coach, guru, and did not go well. And essentially, since that 2003 season, Nebraska has lost 4 games in every single season since then.
Every year since 2003.
Every football season since 2003.
It does feel a little bit like that. Like, I understand why you move off of James Franklin. Like, I don't know if the dude's ever won a big game outside of the blocked kick one that he made against Ohio State a decade ago. But Like when you're sitting there, right, and consistently being a 10-win team, like if you're going to get rid of a guy, and I understand at the time that they got rid of him, they were kind of the first ones to the punch. Oklahoma State might have fired Gundy before him, but still, like at that point, you're like, oh, we're definitely going to be the best job that's open. But even if you're sitting on a consistently 10-win coach who just brought you, who was a drive away from bringing you to a national championship less than 11 months ago, you better damn well have somebody like for sure coming if you're going to make that move. Obviously, they never anticipated LSU or Florida or some of the other schools. Those are the two big ones that have opened up. They never anticipated those becoming available. But when you put that much risk on yourself of basically being right there, you were a drive away from going to the national championship, and you don't have a guy lined up who you are confident in that's going to elevate you or put you in at least the same position as Franklin, that is complete organizational malpractice.
Yeah, and the thing is too, like the other, maybe it's because Kiffin was tied to the SEC schools. Like it felt like there was always names being thrown out all the time, or that were circulating around the other schools. And Penn State, I feel like we didn't really hear anybody. Like there was all speculation, but that was media driven in the beginning about, Rule or
Hartline and Rule were like the two main ones, I feel like, but that was
at the beginning, yeah.
Urban was thrown in there a little bit. There were rumors that he had met with them, and basically they both kind of decided, from what I've read, that they didn't think it would be a very good situation, in which I agree with. I don't think Urban would do very well in today's NIL world. But it was kind of like Urban, Rule, and Hartline that were probably the three that were like, I don't know if they were a real thing, but at least like you heard rumors around those guys' names being tied to Penn State.
Yeah, and that's where the thing is when I was hearing the Satake stuff from BYU, I was like, I mean, if they actually pull that off, I don't hate that in theory. I mean, he's done a lot with a little in the past. I feel like BYU's, since the NIL game's really starting to get going, they've started to, kind of push the envelope there now. But I mean, beforehand, he was doing a lot with a little, like winning big games. Winning a lot of close games. I feel like that's something that BYU gets slighted for still now, and we'll probably get to that later. But I think you're right. I think inevitably he was using it to kind of leverage some other things that he was trying to get. I read some things about him trying to boost, kind of his, his treasury to, to pay assistants. So I don't know if it was even just him related, but I think he was like, well, if we're going to have BYU be as good of a job as Penn State, we're going to have to do what they would do and, be able to hire top flight assistants.
Yeah.
Because, we can joke about Knowles all we want. Hired his ass last year from a national championship. So, I mean, they're clearly willing to, spread the purse strings to get people. So I think that was like he had an easy thing to point to as well. To be like, they literally just did this last year. It might not have worked out, but they spent the money to do it. So yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to say in hindsight now that he's staying that was what he was doing. But I mean, the fact that they were so quiet about it, I did think it was going to be someone like that. And then the fact that they don't land him is, I think, as devastating as it could possibly get.
Yeah, with signing day being tomorrow, you're basically missing out on an entire recruiting cycle. So if you are a young coach or just a coach that's out there searching for a job, you're already kind of going in behind the eight ball. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out, how Penn State kind of approaches everything from here on out. But yeah, if I was a Penn State fan, I don't think I'd be feeling too great today. But we'll see how it goes from there. College football playoff. We had the rankings come out again tonight. Couple surprising things, and I think the biggest thing that I've seen on the timeline as I was kind of reading through before we got on here, Alabama jumping Notre Dame. Alabama jumps into the 9th spot. Notre Dame falls to the 10th. And the biggest argument there is I think the committee said that Alabama went out, got up 17-0 on an Auburn team, but like Auburn had a chance to win that game, and it was competitive deep into the fourth quarter. I don't know why you would now make that switch if you were the selection committee. Like if you were anticipating that Alabama was a better team 2 to 3 weeks ago, I'm not really sure what's changed between now and then. And I think that there's a very strong argument that can be made that like Notre Dame has probably looked better than Alabama over the course of the last few weeks. Like I saw South Carolina almost beat them. Auburn they went toe-to-toe with. But that's a rivalry game on the road. Like I understand that piece of it. But I don't know. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's something to keep my eye on. Is like I think it's almost them starting to, the head-to-head debate with Miami that we're inevitably going to get to. I almost think this is a signal that it's like move Notre Dame down again, because at the end of the day, we're like, as you said, there really wasn't anything that majorly happened that was like, yeah, Alabama's got to be moved over Notre Dame. Like they won a rivalry game, good for them. And I mean, it's not like the Stanford win does anything for Notre Dame, but I mean, they went on the road to Pitt and had a good win the week before.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like they weren't doing anything. So to me, it almost is like kind of a silent move by the committee to be like, yeah, Notre Dame isn't safe by any means. And I don't really know how we get to a place where Miami, jumps them from a ranking standpoint. But to me, as you look at it, Miami is 12.
Yep.
So it's like, let's say BYU loses the Big 12 championship game. They'd pass them. And then it's literally the last spot is Notre Dame versus Miami.
It's Notre Dame versus Miami is the last narrative here, and that's the last. Everybody that's like Texas or below, you're out. I'm sorry, you're out. If BYU wins, Miami and Notre Dame are both gone. If BYU loses, then it turns into what does the committee do? Do you take the team that's looked better over the course of the last 10 games? And in my opinion, I think that they're one of the best teams not named Ohio State in college football. When you talk about like the quarterback that they have, the playmaker and Love that they have, the receivers that they have, the defense is playing better. I think it's hard to argue that many teams have looked much better than Notre Dame outside of Ohio State to this point, or Indiana. But do you also consider, like, why do you play the games then? If you're not going to consider that Miami beat them head-to-head, why do you play the games then? And I completely understand both sides of it. I think that this more so just signals to the fact that this is a broken system and that Miami and Notre Dame probably both deserve to be in because they are two of the top 12 teams in college football. But that's not how it is, and this is what it's going to come down to. And I think it's really going to come down to, do they value a head-to-head win, or do they value the team that's looked better the second half of the way?
Yeah, and like you said, I completely agree. I see both sides to it. I think the thing that's interesting is the rankings kind of eliminated Vanderbilt. And I think in a way, like, I think it's kind of disrespectful to like their losses. Like, they don't really have a bad loss. Their two losses are at Alabama and at Texas. They won at like they their win. I feel like because when they got them, were more highly ranked than what they are now. But I feel like there's an element of when you beat a team when they're ranked like that. I think not that it shouldn't be the same, but like it's still a ranked win in my mind when you're mid-season beating LSU or Missouri, and I feel like they basically just got counted out when they just had a huge win at Tennessee. So I mean, I guess, their two biggest games, they lose. So, they're rolling them out. But, I mean, to me, you're looking at a team that's won all the games they were favored to win and then some. And then their two losses coming on the road against, two other teams in the top, 15. I feel like it doesn't make any sense that it kind of feels like they have Texas above them because of the head to head when they don't have the same logic for Miami.
I also wonder too, like I just feel like Texas is getting a little bit of the Ohio State treatment where everybody that's watched this year is just like it's Ohio State and then it's everybody else. And it's almost like, yeah, Texas has lost 3 games, but one of them came against a team that just looks completely different from everybody else. So we're not going to hold that against them. But at the same point, like I've watched Texas struggle like crazy against Mississippi State. They've lost to Florida. Like they have fucked around with a couple teams that have no chance of even getting in. We have a comment. We have a message in the comments. Can Miami make the playoff if Duke wins the conference? I think that if Duke wins the conference, that about kills them, right? Because then you're not getting anybody in the ACC in, and then that'll probably just slide like a JMU in there, wouldn't you think?
I do think that's I feel like that would be the Notre Dame's biggest thing to point at. Miami lost in a where there was a team with 5 wins that ended up winning it. Like they didn't play in a good conference, blah blah blah. How can we put them in when they're we know they're 10-2, we know they beat Notre Dame, but they didn't win their conference, and the team that won their conference has 5 losses. So I do think if I'm a Notre Dame fan, I'm rooting for Duke, as weirdly as it sounds, because it feels like that's how we'll say Steelers. But the thing is it might not be stealing Notre Dame's spot, if that makes sense. Like right now they're technically in. So to stay in, that might be something that would help them to stay in. I think if you're a Notre Dame fan, you're a Texas Tech fan this week, and you're a Duke fan this week.
Yeah, because I guess so there are basically 2 spots in the bracket right now that aren't called for at this point. So if Duke wins, then like those 2 spots still remain open. But as soon as Virginia wins, that just takes up another spot, and then the 5th spot is going to be the greater 5 or whoever it comes out that's not in the Power 4 that comes out then. I think that game will have an impact, but I think it really, like, the BYU Texas Tech game, I think, is like the deciding factor. If BYU wins, Notre Dame and Miami are done. If BYU loses, then it comes down to the committee and what they value. Do they value the team that looks better through the second half of the season, or do they value the team that won head-to-head week 1? That, like, I understand the Duke and the Virginia, like what everything could happen there, but I think that is the key game at the end of the day. Because you almost still have slots that are kind of spoken for, no matter what really happens there. But that is the one that can still knock you out at the end of the day, because it's still going to be, you're still going to be looking there at that last spot, and it's just you two that are sitting there going back and forth, and the committee's just deciding between one of you two.
Yeah, and I mean, I know it looks like there's 2 spots up for grabs, but one of those spots is up for grabs by 2 teams. Like the Tulane, North Texas, like just based off the rankings, the winner of that's gonna take one of those, playoff spots. It's just whether Virginia and the ACC takes that 4th, championship spot, or if Duke wins, does Duke jump over James Madison, or does James Madison end up getting it? So, like the spots, there's not a lot of wiggle in them because we know where it has to come from with it being a conference champ. It's just how does shake down from it, so I thought that was another kind of minor thing that's interesting, where it's like the American basically has a playoff team this year. It's just whether who wins is in. because
Yeah.
both of them are both ranked above JMU right now. So for JMU to get that bump, what would they have to do? Just absolutely murder. Like I don't know, because I feel like who their win probably they probably look at side by side with whoever wins the Americans, like, well, North Texas beat Tulane, or Tulane beat North Texas, and still kind of give them the edge no matter what happens. Like, it almost feels like it would have to be like that old Ohio State Wisconsin game in the first playoff where Ohio State dropped 70. Like, it
Yeah.
almost feels like they'd have to do something so egregious that you couldn't not put them in.
Right.
But I feel like that's a lot for them to jump, because this week they're at 25. If Tulane wins, they're at 20. And I know North Texas is only one spot ahead of them at 24, but they would have a win against the 20. So to me, it almost feels like the Americans a play-in game this week.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Like, I think that both of those spots are already spoken for no matter what happens, if Virginia wins or Duke wins. Like, if Duke wins, somebody else, it's either going to be Duke or probably somebody else that's a smaller school that's probably just going to slide into that spot. And then Notre Dame and Miami are still in the same situation at the end of the day. We got Abraham coming in with another question. Norm, I'll let you field this one. If BYU loses and the committee keeps them out of the playoff, do you think they will point to SMU last year as to why they're punishing a team for making their conference championship game?
I don't know if it'll necessarily just be because of SMU, but I think that would be a data point, because I think they would point to, well, your big game this year was Texas Tech. Like, you got beat by them both times. I think there's a world where if BYU plays Texas Tech really well, like, let's say Texas Tech wins game-winning field goal, like, and it's just a great game. Like, I still think there's some narratives that could, like, that's the benefit of playing in a conference championship game, right? They have the ability to off of the committee. So to me, it's like, I'm not rolling them out if they lose because of that. I think the thing with SMU that was different was SMU played Clemson, and Clemson wasn't very good last year. They got hot at the end of the year, I guess you'd say. They weren't, they weren't any world beater, throughout the season. Like, Texas Tech doesn't feel like that. So, like, I don't think it. So that's why I don't think they're like a 1-to-1. I think the SMU would kind of be used as, they weren't, overly competitive. Like, we're not rushing to put BYU in. But I think from a resume standpoint, I feel like BYU has a better resume than SMU did by a lot. I think the problem is there's so many teams with 2 losses this year that, like, it's harder to pick from. Like, because a lot of these 2 losses teams, beat each other, because they're in the SEC, or, like the Big Ten schools. Like, weirdly this year, a lot of those top teams didn't end up playing each other, so kind of benefited out on that. Like, how many years are we going to see the best 3 teams in the Big Ten, only 2 of them face each other? Like, Ohio State didn't play Indiana or Oregon. Oregon didn't play Ohio State, and Indiana and Oregon played. So most years you'd be seeing a lot of times all 3 of them are facing each other, or one's facing both. That didn't happen this year. Like, so to me, like, it was just kind of a weird way how it, kind of fell, because, we're like in the SEC, we saw that too. Like, how much did we talk about A&M? Like, they're a great team. And then we look back at their schedule and we're like, holy shit, really the only team they played was Texas. So I think this is kind of what the downside is of how big the conferences are now, is you're not forced to play everybody. So sometimes you can dodge some bullets with how your schedule falls. And I think that's the luxury of kind of being in the Big Ten and SEC now, is as long as you're missing the missiles of the big teams, like, you may be able to get away with it. And, like, the Big 12, on the other hand, like, if you're looking at BYU's schedule, I mean, now it doesn't look as good because everybody they beat kind of was on the fringe of the top 25. But I mean, they handled business They went to Arizona, who was just ranked, or who is ranked, I think, currently. They beat Utah in a rivalry game. They went to Iowa State and won. They lost at Texas Tech, got destroyed. Destroyed TCU, a team that's kind of been on the fringe top 25. They went to Cincy, a team that's been a top fringe 25 team. So to compare to like SMU last year, it didn't feel like there was many ACC teams that were in that fringe top 25. And I think top 20, like that's where the top 25 thing kind of comes in, where it's like the 25 is where you got the ranking. But it's like, I mean, if you beat the 30th best team in the country, that's a big win too. So like I think BYU does have a legitimate gripe, but basically just say that all to say, because I mean, I think the resume is solid. I mean, I think you could make an argument that their best win is as good as Notre Dame's best win. So I think we just got a fucking shit show right now. And the committee wants it to be easy, so that's why you're putting BYU at 11, and the last team out is like, well, if you win, you're in. You win your conference, you're in. And Notre Dame is kind of just sitting there not being able to do anything about it, and so is Miami. So yeah, I mean, this week's going to be awesome for seeing how the cookie crumbles, but I think there's a legitimate case for. I think Notre Dame has one. I think BYU has one. I think Miami has one. I think Vanderbilt's is better than Texas, and I think in a different season that this Texas 9-3, like there's going to be a 3-loss team that makes a 12-team playoff at some point. A Texas type resume is going to be how it's done. This isn't the year because there's too many good 2-loss teams.
Too many 2-loss teams.
But that's kind of how it would happen. Is like you lost to Ohio State, the team that is kind of the unanimous number 1 at this point, or I guess in the unanimous top 2 team at the very least.
That's kind of why I think they're at where they're at. Like the committee's kind of just looking at it as like, yeah, you have a really bad loss against Florida, and then you lost to Georgia, but like we're not going to dink you for losing to the team that's been looked completely different and by far much better than everybody else that's been in the field. For whatever this is worth, I think that there's a narrative out there that Miami will probably get in over Notre Dame because, like we've talked about this entire episode, like it's probably going to come down to either one of those two. FanDuel has Notre Dame at minus 520 odds to get in, while Miami is at plus 570. So if you're in the comments or you're listening, tuning in, let us know in the comments who you think. Does Notre Dame get in or does Miami get in? Because I think at the end of the day, no matter how we talk about this, whatever way we look at this, I think that that's ultimately what it's going to come down to. Norm, before we wrap things up, I did want to note Notre Dame fell out of that 8-9 spot, and if Ohio State goes and takes care of business, I would much rather play Oklahoma or Alabama there that first game. And then now, if Ohio State takes care of business on Indiana, Notre Dame is probably going to be on the bottom side of that bracket, at least where they stand today. You have to see how the entire weekend shakes out and how they end up ranking them and everything. But getting Notre Dame to the opposite side of the bracket, I hope that that stands, because they are a team that I think can compete with Ohio State. Like, Ohio State's better, don't get me wrong, but I think that they have the talent and the playmakers to fuck around and beat Ohio State if Ohio State screws up and doesn't play their best game. So to put them off until the national championship with the earliest we would have to play them, I'm all for that.
Yeah, and I think another thing that I'm going to be kind of rooting for this week is Bama to beat Georgia in the SEC championship, because I think what that would cause is we wouldn't have to play Alabama, Georgia, Oregon, like the team that would fall in that 8-9 slot. Like, I think Oklahoma would probably stay there, but
and I'm not worried about Oklahoma.
Oklahoma A&M, or maybe Oklahoma Ole Miss if they're feeling spicy with the rankings. But the thing is I feel like we'd avoid a lot of the teams that would cause me the most worry, in the quarterfinals. Like, Like, I mean, not that not saying I'm scared of Bama, but as I'm looking at the 10 teams that we're looking at in there right now, they're probably in my top 5 of not wanting to play.
Yeah, for sure.
So
I mean, they got offensive firepower, and like I said, like all it takes is for Ohio State to make a couple turnovers, not play their game, and like Alabama has the talent to kind of fuck around and definitely give them troubles. You know who Ryan Williams is. Ty Simpson's a really good quarterback. They got Bernard that's out there pretty good as well. They have struggles in the run game and whatnot, but they have the offensive firepower where if you don't play your game and you're turning the ball over, they can definitely knock you off. They have talent. They have talent in Tuscaloosa. Norm, before we get on out of here, any last remarks? Anything that you're looking for this weekend as we head into conference championship weekend? You laying the Ohio State minus 4.5?
I will be doing that. That was actually exactly what I was gonna say. I think we were talking about this on the side. I mean, I think this is like the perfect line for an Ohio State hammer. We haven't had one this low in a long time. Looks like we're getting sharp money on Indiana to drop it down to 4.5. I hope we get more. I hope this goes down to 3.5, 2.5. I don't care where the line's moving. I'll be taking Ohio State regardless.
Reminds you,
think what we proved last week was more the defense than the offense.
it reminds you a little bit of the Washington game. That started out as like, I can't remember, like a 12-point, 13-point spread and got all the way down to damn near a touchdown. And the entire time we were like, yes, please. I will still take that.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, and I think with the defense last week, like the early butterflies is what we'll call them, of like they got the big run, get in the field goal range, kick the field goal. And then the saying turnover in our own territory, hold them to a field goal. Like that very easily, you allow a touchdown or something. Like they bend a little bit even, but there was no break in the defense.
Yep.
No touchdowns allowed. Like they scored 3 times, they got 9 points.
Yep.
We scored 3 times, we had 17.
Yep.
So I think that's the big thing with the defense. They're so good in the red zone, don't allow touchdowns. And I mean, I don't foresee that changing this week. I mean, I think Indiana's going to be the best offense we've played, but at the same tune, I think it's going to be the best. I think Ohio State's the best defense they've played.
Yeah.
And I think from the IU defense versus Ohio State offense, I think Ohio State's offense is the best they've played.
I've watched a couple IU games. I want to watch probably a couple more, but I as so far from what I've seen, I like our matchup against their defense. I think that not that we won't have any troubles, but they're vulnerable. I'll just put it that way. But yeah, appreciate everybody tuning in. Question of the night: who's getting in, Notre Dame or Miami? Drop it in the comments. Let us know. We'll tune in. See you guys next time.